Hello, everybody. I hope you all are having a good day. It's 10:30 p.m. here in Texas, and I'll just take a screenshot for attendance at the beginning of the meeting, and we shall start. During the meeting, if you have any queries, any doubts, if you're not able to hear me properly, if you want me to go slow, if you're not able to see my screen, you can either unmute yourself and let me know, or you can just mention in the chat box. The chat box is open. All right, I'll share my screen. Till the screen is being shared, I'll let you know that today I will try to touch up on literature search, Prospero, so basically creation of a systematic review protocol using the Prisma P guideline and registering it in Prospero. And then, if time permits, we can go through importing all papers from databases and how to use Rayyan. So we can touch up on Zotero, we can touch up on Rayyan, and we can just go through Excel sheet, which is the most basic form of data management. Okay. So we have literature search. Where do we search for papers? So we search in databases. Like the last time we discussed, databases are basically libraries online libraries where journals are indexed, and we can get all the papers in those journals which are indexed in particular databases. We have PubMed, Scopus, Web of Science, Duage, Google Scholar, Science Direct, Cochrane Register. Out of these, only the freely accessed, so these are just some of them. There are a lot of databases. Out of these, we'll be using only the free ones. And I have a very good experience with PubMed, Science Direct, Google Scholar, Duage, and if we are going for clinical trials, we can also add Cochrane trials. If your university gives you access to any database like Web of Science or Scopus, please let us know. Or even Embase, I can add that. So that will help us a lot. This is an example of a very robust literature search. Don't get overwhelmed by it. I understand there are a lot of technical words and technical symbols that are being used. We will go through them during this session. So how to create a search strategy? So there are specific steps that first you look for search terms, you look for synonyms, and you use the thesaurus. And then there are keywords, there are subject headings. Keywords are the words which we create, which we find through our search, through our prior knowledge. Subject heading, these are the words which are already present in databases. So for example, if I want to search for, say, use of a new drug, say XYZ in diabetes patients, and want to see the effectiveness, and I want to see these patients in a clinical trial. So when I'm using keywords, I will be typing clinical trial or randomized clinical trial or trial. And if I'm using subject headings, there'll be a tab in databases for observational studies, clinical trials, systematic reviews, editorials. So I'll just click on that. That is what a subject heading is. And then for exact phrases, I will let you know how to do that. Truncated searches, wildcard searches, these are a few new terms that will be introduced. Boolean logic you might be aware of, and or not functions, and then citation searching. So the first step is choosing search terms. This is how we create where we create the different terms, and this is very easy for us to understand also. All of you know what PICO is. and most of you have your research question ready with you. So, for example, if this is a study to find, can cognitive behavioral therapy improve self-esteem in patients with eating disorder? So the patient population is, the patients are those with eating disorders. And using synonyms and thesaurus, they got appetite disorder, bulimia, anorexia, etc. Anorexic, bulimic, these different types. And then S is also important, plural, singular forms, British English, American English, all those variations. And similarly for intervention, comparison, outcome, you can get all the synonyms. But you have to make sure that they are similar. The synonyms, they should not have very different meaning, because then your search will become too broad and you'll just have 2 to 3 lakh of papers, and there is no use of that. Okay, how do we find alternative keywords? Remember, I mentioned that keywords are the words that we suggest. That is why, how do we find? Use thesaurus, search for your concepts on search engines, and you can go through similar papers and see what alternative terms they have used. And then there are subject headings. If the database uses subject headings, I told you that databases have tabs, so that's how you can use subject headings as well. All right. A keyword search. So I have talked about keyword, I have talked about databases. To have a very robust search, you must use keywords and databases together. And if you want to use the exact phrase, then you should use semicolon, double inverted commas. So that's what you should use, so that the database will search for the exact term. It is very important that you do not make any spelling mistake. You do not add an extra space. You do not remove space from where it is required. All these things are very important when you use exact phrases. Or even normal search strategy also, you should make sure that you do not make any spelling mistakes. All right, now talking about truncation, I earlier talked about this, bulimia and bulimic. Okay, let me give you this example. It will be better for you. For example, you want to talk about therapy. There are alternative terms like therapies, therapists, therapists. You can just write therap and then this asterisk. So all these words will be searched for. This is known as truncation. And what is wildcard? So as I mentioned, for British and American spellings, they might be different. So for behavior, for example, so after O, you can just put a question mark. So that's how we use truncation, and this is how we use wildcard. Now talking about another concept, adjacent phrases. So if you want to search for physician relationships, then you can either just type this. This will come under exact phrases, because these are under these are between inverted commas. If you do not want to use the exact phrase, then you can use this adjacent. And this one is used in Medline. Medline is one of the components of PubMed. So whenever I say Medline, it's synonymous to PubMed. For simplicity, let's keep that. So adjacent is used in PubMed, and other papers, other databases, you can use inverted commas. And then we have variable. So for example, if for truncation, if the plural ends with ES or S, then you can use an asterisk. But if plural ends with a different letter in between the word, then you use a hashtag. So you have to remember where to use a question mark, where to use an asterisk, where to use a hashtag. These are important points. All right. This is all about mesh headings. Main thing to remember is this: why do we use mesh headings? So for example, I want to search for the term ICU. Now, different authors in their papers use variations of the same word. One author will use intensive care, one author will use PICU, the other author will use MICU, and I will use ICU. So I have to take into account all of these words. If I am typing these words, all of them with the Boolean Boolean term or, then that will be known as keyword. If the database already provides, now how can databases provide subject headings? One of them, which you might already know, is mesh. Mesh basically means medical subject headings, and PubMed uses medical subject headings. So when you use those terms, those are known as using subject headings. So in your search strategy, you have to use subject headings and keywords. For Embase, if you have institutional access to the database Embase, then it does not use mesh, it uses M-tree. It's just for GK because we won't be using Embase in our study. Boolean operators, I won't go into detail, it's very simple. Now using citation searching. So how do we do that? You remember I said you can use for alternate terms by looking at similar papers. Just like that, when you have collected your papers from various databases and you still want to search for papers, so first you will do a random search on Google, or here they have mentioned Google Scholar, but you can use Google as well. And then you can go to similar papers, previously published systematic reviews or meta-analysis, and then you go to their citations, and then you collect articles. This is a very tedious way, but it is very, very effective because this way you'll find very similar papers. All right, this was an example. I will talk about all. So this is basically just using alternative terms. Remember, we had this example earlier when I was teaching you PICO. So instead of flavone-luteolin, I can use plant-based therapy. Instead of traumatic brain injury, I can use motor vehicle accident. And then there is chronic inflammation. This is the simplest form of search string that we can use. A bit more complex is this. If I want to find the association of calcium dysregulation in Alzheimer's disease, then what I'll do? The first string I can put as Alzheimer's and calcium dysregulation. Second, dementia and calcium. Third, calcium metabolism. This is what I've changed. Fourth, dementia and calcium metabolism. And then the fifth string will be 1 or 2 or 3 or 4. And that will give me my papers. So this is another way you can search. And then coming to this complex search string that we earlier saw. So as you see now, to understand this asterisk, now you understand. So when they use MP, okay, let's leave this for now. They are basically the tabs that are provided by databases. So it's nothing else. And these are the hashtag 1, 2, 3, 4, and then they are using OR. So eating disorders or appetite disorders or bulimic, bulimia, anorexic, anorexia. So all of that. And then we have cognitive, we won't go into much detail because we have to rush, but I will be sending this image to all of you. You go through this and then you ask whatever queries you get. And then in the end, this is interesting. So they have used the 6th search string is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 with OR. The 12th search string is 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 with OR. And then the 19th search string is 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 with OR. In the 20th one, they use the Boolean term AND with 6, 12, and 19. So they have basically compressed all these search strings into just one line. And then they are limiting it to English language. We will not be using such a robust search string. This is only for theoretical purpose. When we create it, you will understand how we get to this. In the end, it might look like this, but we are going to start with a very simple string. Okay, data managers. So these are the tools that we use for systematic review. There are citation management softwares like EndNote, Mendeley, Zotero. So here, if you want to get citation for all your papers, say Vancouver citation, the APA citation, then you can use these. Also, Zotero can be used to import papers from databases, export it into Excel sheet, and then you can just import that Excel sheet into Rayyan. So that also can be done. We will be using Zotero. We won't be using Mendeley and EndNote. And then there are tools for conducting title abstract screening, for conducting full text screening, for conducting data extraction, quality assessment, etc. Here, there are a lot of tools and applications like Excel, Rayyan Covidence, RevMan, SysRev, Distiller SR. We will only be using Excel and Rayyan. The others, they are just for your knowledge purpose. Okay, importing papers. I will be showing this to you live. Okay, let's start actually. All right. So this is the PubMed homepage. I'll be taking example of group 0305. They have done really good work, and seeing their enthusiasm, I started conducting their search. This is the simplest form of search string. As I mentioned, we'll be starting simple and then we'll move to more complex ones. So in PubMed, we have this string already ready. Okay, let me introduce the topic to you. Understanding the transmission, diagnosis, treatment of monkeypox, a systematic review of case reports. This is what we are working on. I'll show you an example. So we get 62 results. Now I want to save all of them. I will have two ways of how to do that. Okay, in the chat, please let me know how many of you have Zotero extension in your Google Chrome, and how many of you have downloaded Zotero, and how many of you have, okay, Aisha has done it, great. Anybody else? Anaswa has done it, great, okay. Rafia, Sujaya, all right. Okay, awesome. Everybody should download their Zotero extension to your Chrome, and everybody should have the Zotero application. And you have to make your account in Rayyan. So these are prerequisites for the next task. Okay, yes. So what I did was I shifted from Safari to Google Chrome because we don't have extensions in Safari for some reason. Now I will import all these papers in two ways. First way is the easy way, which is present only in PubMed till I am aware. So I just click on save. Either I can do all results on this page or just all results on all pages. And then do I want summary in text? Do I want in this format or CSV? I always choose CSV. CSV is basically Excel sheet. That is what. So in Word, we have .xls as the extension of Excel sheets. Here, this might be a different format, but you'll see when you have a look at it, it's very, very similar to Excel sheet. Okay, I'll open it and let you know. Okay, so here you go. We have, as you can see, all 62, 63. The first one is the title and everything. So 62 papers imported into my Excel sheet. And what are the headings? We have title, we have authors, we have citation, first author, journal, publication, PMID, DOI. Okay, now I'll leave this here. And now we will use Zotero to import. because we are going to use Zotero to import papers from Google Scholar, Doage, and Science Direct. I won't be showing those databases right now. I'll just be showing PubMed. If time permits, later on, I can show it to you. I'll be using Zotero connector. Oops, some pages directly to Zotero. Enable saving. Okay. So what happened was Zotero is showing me all papers on the same page. So I can do select all, and then I'll click OK. Were you able to see the Zotero thing that was asking me?
Hi Purva, I don't think we saw it on the page though,
Oh,
but
I see.
I have used Zotero so I can get an idea of like how is it going.
Okay, all right. Thank you for letting me know. Let me use the connector once again. I don't know what happened. Okay, there is a system update. So till then, let's go to Google Scholar and try out the other thing. Okay. Can you see my screen, the Safari screen? Can you see the screen with literature search?
Yes, we can. Yeah.
So this is the search title, search string for Google Scholar. Here, all in title, we have to mention. In PubMed, when we search, we have this. We have a tab where we can just click on title and abstract, and it will search for title and abstract only. All right. Just copy pasting, and we have 113 results. So I think my Zotero should start now. That is how Google Scholar looks like. Okay, can you see my screen? I think you should be able to.
Yes, we can. Yeah.
Okay. Can you see this? The Zotero, which has
you play options, is it?
Let me do a new share. Let me show it to you here. Yeah, I think I can show it to you. Can you see this, Zotero?
Yes,
I
we
can
can.
select. Awesome.
Yeah.
So these are the list of papers present in that page. I'll just select all and click on OK. And I'll open my Zotero. There you go. So as you can see, we have all our papers imported into Zotero. I have already imported them from before so that we can save some time. And then, yeah. So on the left-hand side, if you wish to create another folder. So for example, if I'm working with 03017, I'll create a folder. And now if I import papers, Zotero will first ask me if I want to take all the papers to 0305 or 0307. So I'll be clicking whichever group I'm working on. And then when we have all of these, I'll click on just right click on the folder and click on export collection. Format will be CSV by default. There are a lot of formats. EndNote is one of them and RIS is one of them, but you will be using CSV. It's easier that way. This is technical terms, just ignore them. I usually do. And click on OK and you'll get that. I'll just ask them to save it to my desktop. And that's done. I'll stop sharing. I'll show it to you, the Excel sheet that is created. And we can compare this Excel sheet with another. Here you go. So just like the previous one, we have all the information which was similar to that, publication title. In addition to that, we have abstract note. So here, the entire abstract is present. It will be present here as well. Date added, modified, pages. Zotero is a reference manager. There is a difference. It extracts all this data to create a proper reference also. It has a lot of information which we do not need at all. We'll be using very limited amount of information from this table. So, okay. Now you have seen how to import papers from databases into Excel sheets. And later I'll show how to import all these Excel sheets into Rayyan. But first, let's move forward with this. All right. Once we have imported all papers into Rayyan, what do? We start the inclusion exclusion. We start the title and abstract screening, and we complete the full text screening. For inclusion exclusion criteria, we are going to create these criteria from beforehand. So when we are creating our protocol according to Prisma P guidelines, we have to create the inclusion exclusion criteria. So they will be present. And how do we create these inclusion exclusion criteria? So these are some points that we take into account. So date, last 10 years papers I want to see. Exposure of interest. So for example, if the patient was given a particular drug, like I'm doing a systematic review on the effect of proton pump inhibitors in globus pharyngeus patients. So I'll see the inclusion criteria will be patients who are receiving proton pump inhibitors. That will be the inclusion criteria. Geographical location. If you're doing an international study or if you're doing an Asian study or something like that. For example, I'll be doing one study in South Asia. So I will limit my study inclusion criteria to that place. Then we have language only in English, participants, that is basically adults, children, and male, female, all of that information. Other things we take into consideration when we create the inclusion exclusion criteria. That's peer-reviewed journal. We want papers from peer-reviewed journals. And then how are the outcomes reported? So are they self-reported outcomes through questionnaires, or has the clinician taken the outcome? So these points, if you want to be very, very specific, you can be. So you can exclude those outcomes which were reported by patients, and you can just include the outcomes reported by physicians. Setting, hospital setting or home care or population-based study. Study design. So if you want to do a systematic review of RCT, then you can just keep that. Whenever you are conducting a systematic review, you have to add this sentence that exclusion criteria, we are going to exclude editorials, commentaries, conference abstracts, all these types of papers, systematic reviews, narrative reviews, meta-analysis, because by default, systematic reviews and meta-analysis, they are conducted on primary studies. You very well know that by now. Now, type of publication. That will also be small scale studies, large scale studies, and what journal if you want to be very, very specific. Once you have created your inclusion exclusion criteria, you will use Rayyan to screen papers. And then after screening, you have your final included studies. So this is how you report the selection process. These are the number of papers 365 identified by database searching. And these are the number of papers by additional sources. By additional sources, I mean random Google search or citation searching that we talked about. And then the screening process. Screening process basically means number one, duplicate removal. You can do duplicate removal either on Zotero or Rayyan. Both of them do that job. And then we screen records through title and abstract review. In title and abstract review, we basically make sure that inclusion exclusion criteria are followed. We will understand the type of study also. So it is easier to exclude papers through title and abstract study. That is why we do that first. And then for eligibility, we open the full text and we go through their results section to see what outcomes they have taken. And we see if they give any insight into our topic. So we take them. This you will be more clear once we have created the inclusion and exclusion criteria for your respective papers. And later on, we present the included studies. Now talking about protocol, why should we register our protocol? So number one, it avoids duplication. If I'm working on, say, a new drug XYZ on diabetes, and I see on Prospero that systematic review is already happening, it has not been published. So when I decided this topic, I was not able to find any paper on my Google search or PubMed search. But on Prospero, it was there. And they mentioned that the review was ongoing. That meant that I would not be providing any novelty because that person who has been working on that paper, they will be the first. And then, of course, if we have a protocol from beforehand, it will reduce bias, it will provide more clarity, and just basic, it is just how we perform to streamline the process. What are the different registries? So there are prospective registries, there are retrospective registries. Prospective registries, one of them is Prospero, which we'll be using. Others are research registry in Plasi, OSF, protocols.io. If you see here, we want to see if any of them are accepting systematic reviews only. So Prospero only accepts systematic reviews, while OSF accepts all study designs. So if you're working on observational studies also, I think some of the mentees here are working on observational studies. You can look it up, even protocols.io. And then if you want to see the cost, Prospero is free of cost, OSF is free of cost, Protocols is free of cost. If it's paid, you don't even look at it. We are only looking at free of cost databases, free of cost journals. Okay. Now talking about retrospective registries, it's not important at all. It's just theoretical. You can go through them when I shared the slides with you. Before creating the protocol, what do you do? So you go to Prospero, you register your account, you search for similar papers. I gave you an example about using XYZ drug on diabetes because we want to make sure that we are first to the game. And then we check for eligibility. I'll go to Prospero and then I'll show you how to do that. Just one moment, please. Okay, so this is the Prospero. This is not the home page. This is the Prospero homepage, and I have already signed in. If you see, I will only go through the important lines that are there. But when you have time, please feel free to go through this website, because the information mentioned here is very easy to read and it will be very important for you. So they accept systematic reviews, rapid reviews, and umbrella reviews. We will talk about these later in the next slide. It's there. And does not accept scoping reviews, literature scans. It accepts human studies and animal studies. It does not accept laboratory and cell culture tissue studies. These things are important to know. And then you can go to how to register. Here you go. This is also something interesting. Right now, Prospero accepts only those systematic reviews who have not started their data extraction process. So that is important to know. We also have to take into account that they are going to make the acceptance criteria even more strict. So right now they have mentioned that right now they are accepting articles who have completed full text screening and title and abstract screening. That means that they are not going to accept these articles later on. So just be careful. And as soon as you have your topic decided, you have your PICO, you have your inclusion exclusion criteria, you have your outcome, the primary and secondary outcomes that you are going to see, then the statistical tests that you use will be very, very similar to each other. The risk of bias and quality check that you perform, that will also be very similar to other systematic reviews. So once you have this information, you must register, you must create a protocol and register to Prospero. That is the right time to register. Humans and animals. Now, these are important points. So they should be related to a health outcome and not a survey on, say, a new education system. Say we want to see if didactic education is better or Socratic, then Prospero won't accept that paper. It has to be related to health. Completed reviews, you already know about that. Cochrane reviews should not be registered. So we have seen that Cochrane registry is one of the registries I've mentioned in retrospective, but it is also a prospective registry. So if your systematic review is a Cochrane review, then you cannot submit to Prospero, and it goes vice versa because they are trying to collaborate. Right now, till I am aware, Cochrane is not accepting new titles, and that is why we're using Prospero. Okay, so here, reviews are currently accepted for registration as long as this. But ideally, before screening for inclusion begins, you have to submit. These are important points that you have to consider. Now we will go back to the slide. Yes. So we have, oh, we did not search. I'm so sorry. We need to search for similar papers as well. Here you go. So let's take the example of something easier: calcium dysregulation and Alzheimer's disease. So when I write calcium dysregulation, so long. I use my Google Chrome. I think I have been using Safari for quite some time, and that's why it's misbehaving now. I don't need to log in to have a search. I'll type in calcium dysregulation. to not be working. Let's carry on and we can wait for the internet to come back. Till then, we can go to the slides. All right. We will check for similar papers because that is an important step that we all should practice. This is where you'll see the types of papers. So the first question you ask, do you want to gather all the evidence on a particular research topic? Then you click on, if you click on yes, then you move forward. Otherwise, it's a narrative review. In a narrative review, I randomly type, in a narrative review, also you have to select papers in a systematic approach for sure. You have to select papers using search terms and using databases. But the screening process is different, and you don't need a robust search string that we are going to use for systematic reviews. That's why narrative reviews are not preferred by journals, because they usually give a biased view because we are not looking at all the evidence. And then do we have 3 or more people? Yes. An ideal systematic review requires at least 3 people. Reason being, when we are screening the papers for title, abstract, full text, 2 reviewers will screen them in a blinded fashion. Rayyan allows us to screen for papers in a blinded fashion, and you can either accept, that is green, you can either reject, that is red, or you can say maybe, that will be yellow or orange. Now, a senior reviewer, that is third author, they will step in whenever there is a yellow, that is maybe, by either of the authors. Second, if there is a discrepancy between the 2 authors, one has accepted, the other has rejected, then the third person will step in and sort the issue. And then, do you have 12 to 18 months to complete a review? No. So it will be a rapid review. Prospero accepts rapid reviews, so no issue there. If you click on yes, do you have a broad topic or multiple research questions? So here, if I want to search for calcium dysregulation in Alzheimer's disease, I have one exposure and one outcome. So it will just be one research question. I'll be clicking no. But if I want to see all the electrolyte abnormalities that are present in Alzheimer's disease, or all the risk factors which lead to Alzheimer's disease, then it will mainly be a scoping review. Now, the next question is, do you want to review other published systematic reviews on your topic? So there are a lot of papers which are systematic review of systematic reviews. You can do that. It's a very, very high quality of paper if you're doing a review of reviews. That will be an umbrella review, and that is also accepted. And no, do you have a well-formulated research question? We, of course, move forward only when we have a proper question. Yes, systematic review. Will you be using statistical methods to objectively evaluate, synthesize, and summarize results? Yes, meta-analysis. I have been asked a lot of times, what is the difference between meta-analysis and systematic review? So systematic review is a review is a qualitative review. Meta-analysis is a quantitative review. I remember talking about this in the last session, so I might not go into detail, but basically in systematic review, you will be mentioning the percentage of people, percentage of patients with a particular condition, or number of papers who have shown a positive effect, number of papers who have which have shown a negative effect. In meta-analysis, you will be conducting a multivariate regression or a logistical regression with by adding the means of every paper or the odds ratio or relative risk, and you will be taking into account the number of participants in each paper and the standard deviation, and then you will conduct that analysis to get you another effective odds ratio or effective relative risk. That is what meta-analysis basically means. No. All right. So now I will be talking about creating a protocol using the Prisma P guidelines. So the first thing we do is write introduction for the protocol. In Prospero, you do not require introduction, but a protocol contains an introduction in the beginning. So it has to be there when we create it. And how do we write introduction? What I follow personally is that I have 4 paragraphs. The first paragraph, I introduce my topic, starting with a general statement and then narrowing down. New terms whatever new terms I'll be introducing in my paper, I will mention. The burden of disease, statistics, healthcare cost, health disparity, I'll be mentioning. Now I have a task for all of you. Please read this paragraph and give me what would be the title of this study, or what would be the research question of this study. This is the first paragraph of introduction of one of the papers I found on the internet. You'll have to unmute yourself and let me know because I'm not able to see the chat box. So please unmute yourself and let me know. I'll wait for 2 minutes. Anybody?
Hi, Purva, Sujaya here.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Is this something, I don't know, I think it's the consequences of long-term diabetes or something like that.
Nice. Great one, Jaya. Thank you. I want everybody to try. So once at least 4 to 5 people have tried, I will give the answer. So Sujaya has mentioned long-term consequences of diabetes. Anything else? We need participation. Okay, never mind. So the
diabetes related complications.
Sorry?
Diabetes related complications.
Yes, exactly. Diabetes related complication. Now I will reveal the title. Thank you. Could I know your name, please?
Isha.
Isha. Oh, okay. Thank you. All right. So this was a systematic review on diabetes and COVID-19. There, COVID-19 has not been mentioned in the first paragraph. So according to me, this is not a good first paragraph because you do not know what the research is about by reading the first paragraph. It's very, very important. Now we will move on to the next. This is also the first paragraph of introduction of another paper. Please go through it and try answering. What is the study about? I really would appreciate if everybody answers.
Hello, Purva.
Hi.
Hi. I think this is post TBI fatigue during recovery of TBI or something like that.
Nice. Sujaya, is that you? I'm not able to see.
Yeah.
Great.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sujaya. Anybody else? You can repeat the answers as well. I just want to know that you are active and have not fallen asleep.
Hi everyone.
Hi.
I guess it's about the post-traumatic brain injury fatigue effect on the daily life activities, I guess, and
Great.
social thing.
All right. Could I know your name, please?
Fahad.
Okay. Thank you. Third, any one answer I'll wait and then I'll reveal the answer. Anybody?
Hi, Assam. Hi.
Hello.
Are you listening me?
Yes.
The traumatic and brain injury is chronic sequences of traumatic brain injury in U.S. states.
Yes. Thank you. Could I know your name, please?
Ikra.
Ifra. Thank you. Ikra. So it is fatigue after traumatic brain injury. Majority of you have gotten it correct, and this is a good example of how to write a first paragraph. It has statistics, it has cost. So cost is not compulsory, but I like that aspect because it just adds to the burden. And then it has introduced all the terms that it is going to talk about later on. It's a good study. Now, coming to the second paragraph, you will be mentioning what is already known about your topic. So you can use conclusions from already published papers. Here, when I talk about papers, you will be mentioning the results of already published systematic reviews. So if I'm working on, again, I'll take the easy example, XYZ drug, diabetes, all the papers that have been published on this topic, I will mention the results that so many papers, 10 papers showed good result, 2 papers showed bad result, and so and so. They were conducted in these areas and so and so. In the third paragraph, I will introduce gaps in literature in this particular topic, talk about limitations of these 12 published papers that I talked about in the previous paragraph. I will talk about the impact that my paper will make in the scientific community and medical practice. And then I will establish that my paper is giving novelty and relevance to the journal. So these points are also very important. For example, if all the papers that have been published, they were conducted in North America, Europe, and in East Asia, but none in South Asia. So I'll mention that. If the number of participants, the number of papers, they were less as compared to my systematic review, I will mention that. If some other development happened during the in between the last published paper and my paper in that particular drug or in diabetes, then I'll mention that as well. And then in the fourth paragraph, I'll say what is my aim, what are the objectives of my paper. That is how an introduction is written effectively. Now coming to methods. These are just screenshots from the Prisma P protocol. All right, eligibility criteria. That's basically PICO, and then the study design, setting, time frame. All these things we have gone through in the inclusion criteria. So whatever inclusion criteria we have written, exclusion criteria, the PICO, we will mention. Information sources. What does that mean? They are the databases. What databases we are going to use, what trial registries, Cochrane, for example. If we are going to use gray literature sources, what are gray literature sources? So Google Scholar and DOAJ, they are considered to be gray literature sources. Reason being, they might include papers from non-peer reviewed journals. They might, so you might have seen a lot of predatory journals that are indexed in many databases. So these databases basically come under gray literature sources because of course the quality of papers published are not at par with the standard databases. But saying that we have to look into these as well, not have to, but it's good if we look at these databases also because you get all the papers that are there. And in the exclusion criteria, if I mention, we won't be including papers which are from non-peer reviewed journals. So you're automatically removing the papers which are not of good quality. So that is how you improve the scientific quality of your paper. Then search strategy, that will be the search string that we have just learned about. Then study records, data management. What application did we use? Did we use Zotero, EndNote, Rayyan, Covidence? We'll be mentioning that. How did we manage our data? Selection process. So as I mentioned, 2 independent reviewers select, screen studies, and then the third one jumps in case of any issues. So what application did we use for the selection process? All that we mentioned here. Data collection process. Data collection is basically data extraction. We use Excel sheet for data extraction because I feel the most comfortable when using Excel sheets. That's why I have been doing that. If you come across any interesting data extraction software, then please let me know. I am happy to experiment. And then data items, they are basically variables. So I'll take an example. This study using proton pump inhibitors in globus pharyngeus patients. Or let's just say using proton pump inhibitors in GERD patients, gastroesophageal reflux disease patients. So the variables that I'll be using are, there'll be variables for papers, there'll be variables for the PICO, that's population, comparator group, all of that. The papers I'll be mentioning, first author name, year of study, study type, study location, number of participants, all of that. And then I will mention percentage female, percentage male, number, average age of the population, sorry, not population, of the sample, and with standard deviation. And then I'll search for patients with number of patients with GERD, number of patients without GERD. If it's a clinical trial, it will be using, if an observational study, it will be using that. Then we have proton pump inhibitors, the dosage taken, the number of days taken, and then outcome. What questionnaire did they use? What was it filled by the patients? Was it filled by the physicians? I will extract all this information in my Excel sheet. This is the most cumbersome process, and majority of papers get stuck in this process. But this is where you have to just follow through and complete the data extraction work. And then we have selection process. Selection we already saw, data collection, data items. Okay, awesome. Now talking about outcomes and prioritization. So let's leave this topic because I won't be able to explain to you risk of bias, data synthesis, prioritization without explaining a few basic things first. So this part of Prisma-P will take it up in the next meeting that we have. Okay, registering protocol. So I'll check if my internet is working. We have half an hour more. Okay. Let's take a 5-minute break and then we'll resume. Till then, any queries you have, please mention in the chat box and I'll just take one quick break and you all can also relax for 5 minutes.